Hey, what's up, speedtards? Tonight we'll be conducting an interview with Weaponized Goebbels. He's a well-known third position propagandist. He also is the host of Third Position Radio. It's a really good show. His co-host is Lord Dark. Yeah, he's had me on his show a couple times now. I'm sure I'll be back on eventually, but yeah, I'd highly recommend checking them out. They're on BitChute. So, Weaponized Goebbels. Do you want to like introduce yourself to the Futurism Forever audience? Tell them who you are. Anything I might have missed. Explain, introduce yourself in your own words, I
All
guess.
right. Well, I'm Weaponized Goebbels. I've been involved in propaganda and third position art for a while now. I think it kind of picked up around maybe around Charlottesville. That's when I started getting more involved, and that didn't really have too much to play into it. It's just that's around the time period, so everyone understands. Um, I kind of just do like pan third positionist art. I don't really have any, at least in the artistry I do, I don't really have any, certain ideological preference as long as it, is in the third position. Uh, I'm not too, I'm in all of Geo's servers. I'm just not too talkative typically. I'm more of a lurker, and that's how I am in most things that I'm in. I also run third position radio, as Geo mentioned. There, me and Dark talk about current events, how that plays into greater political themes. Um, I can't think of anything else. I think I covered most of the things right there.
Okay, I will link to your BitChute channel, and he's more active on Twitter than Telegram, actually. But yeah, that's where I found him, and I've been following him for a couple years now. I'm a big fan of his work. He actually designed the Futurism Forever logo that you see on my banner on Twitter. So, who else have you worked for, off the top of your head, or like what kind of
Oh,
projects have you been involved in,
worked for.
or done work for, rather?
Yeah. So I've done I've done work for quite a few organizations. Some I was part of, some I wasn't. Sometimes I've had organizations just steal my art and not even ask. That's happened with the New British Union, and I think once with some American group. I can't remember off the top of my head. Personally, I don't really care. They can use it if they want. I just would like the little credit, and I don't have anything against them. It was probably just some random guy in an office who chose to use the stuff. Because a lot of third positionist art out there isn't exactly, they don't really have watermarks and some guy's name attached to it, so it's kind of free flowing
Yeah, yeah.
informationally, which I've
On the
I've always
internet,
been.
on the internet, everyone steals from everyone. But when it's original work, yeah, I can definitely sympathize with you. You like to get credited, you know.
No, I mean, I get that, but I never put like a signature or anything on my work. It's then the inherent like mimetic properties of what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to float around and not be attached to anything. So I don't really mind, that it's going out there without my name attached to it. I don't really need my name attached to anything. But that could have got me some business doing, people asking for me to do art. So
Yeah,
missed opportunity in that sense.
yeah, your work is good, and it would be nice to see you credited when that happens. But yeah, like who else have you like been commissioned to do work for, or like you do thumbnails, you do like original art that you post on Twitter and stuff. Like, what is it
Yeah,
generally used for?
I'll make like posters. Like I've made posters that have actually been placed up. That was back when I was working more with like a Midwestern Alliance, and I was a head figure in that one. So I can't really say I was working for them. I was more so just working with them. Um, Geez, just a lot
Who
of
is
things.
who is Midwestern Alliance? I'm not familiar.
Oh, it was really just kind of like a Midwestern independence movement. Kind of fashy. It was a little divided. Some people just wanted an ethno state in the Midwest. Some people just wanted independence. The ideologically, there wasn't any certain ground. Just that the Midwest of America has its own identity, separate than the South, separate than the North, separate than any other part of the country, and that we could be successful breaking off from the rest of the Union because we have all the industry and all the agriculture.
Okay, okay. It's a good overview. So who else? Um,
Jeez, have to pull up like a whole list of things and just look through my history of making things. I started mainly doing
yeah.
propaganda for them, like actual propaganda. Like I was doing art before that, but it was just mainly like I started on art in general, like making like I was just bored and I was like, I like alternate history. I'm gonna make alternate history flags, and then it kind of just spiraled after that. Like
Okay, so like let's go back to like
I
how
know
did you
I'm
get
jumping around.
I am too. I'm not a professional interviewer. But how did you get started with art? Was like did your interest in politics come first or did your interest in art come first and like you found like you could express your political beliefs through art or how did it all come about?
Well, I it more came through from like a love of history. Like
Okay.
I I'm pretty late late bloomer when it came to history. You know, like you talk to some history nerds, they've been into that since like they were in kindergarten. Like, you know, like they chose their personality type from birth and they ran with it. I didn't discover that I loved history until like my senior year of high school. And from there, I started doing research on my own time, you know, because the world's out there nowadays. Like um, every almost most well documented historical events, even poorly documented historical events, you can find that all online. And I don't just mean like YouTube or Wikipedia. I meant like you can find free scholarly sources out there. But anyway, I got into history, and that's what led to my fascination with symbolism, like you know, flags, national symbols, regional symbols, that sort of thing. Like I really started digging into that, and then I always thought, hey, what if this historical event would have turned out differently? What symbolism would have appeared in this area? What kind of new cultures, new ideas, new trends, and how would that be shown in their artwork or their national ideas from like you know flags and from a visual standpoint? And well, I could really only do so much like sketching on notebook paper. So I started getting into stuff on the computer, like Publisher, and that's what I started on, like Paint, then Publisher. Now I'm doing most of my stuff with Photoshop. Um, that's really how I got started on that. It wasn't really even political. I wasn't even where I am politically back then. I used to be like, you know, kind of like a yeah, kind of like a center right, you know, conservative, capitalist. The America was the greatest country in the world. That's why we ruled it. That kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. My journey was like the opposite. I definitely came from the left and got like red pilled on fascism kind of through futurism. Like futurism is what like initially sparked the interest, and because of the overlap with fascism, I wanted to like explore that ideology more. And like I am eventually like embraced it. It took a while, like it didn't happen right away, but
Oh
it was
yeah, no,
definitely like the art first that like caught my interest.
oh
My
yeah,
like
and
my background's
mine
more
was mine was the exact opposite with that point. Discovery of futurism. It was
yeah.
through fascism, through seeing Marinetti's works within the Italian fascist like you know ideas. I got two futurism through fascism, so literally the exact opposite angle.
Yeah. Looking at some of the art you sent me, how would you describe yourself like ideologically? Like getting into it, was it more like the ethnic nationalist stuff that like piqued your interest initially, or was it the ideology itself, or was it
Well,
Italian fascism, or
it I guess my first steps into fascism were British fascism, you know, Mosley, and that's a natural first step for most fascists because he's speaking English, you know.
yeah,
And
yeah,
to get into like you know national socialism or Italian fascism or any other branch or the Ustashi, you have to you know do a lot of digging and go through a lot of poor translations or even have to translate yourself. So typically, you know, British fascism is most people's first stop on the way there. Um, I and it wasn't really like even though I did work with some, I've worked with neo-Nazi organizations, white nationalist organizations. That part of it really just never piqued my interest. It was just more so the people like this group of people coming together to do something almost kind of revolutionary because you know any sort of racial politics nowadays are incredibly against the grain, incredibly rebellious, and I guess that was probably more of the appeal than anything. any actual beliefs in like the superiority of the white race or anything like that.
Okay, okay. Hmm. Who like as far as the art goes, like who would you say are some of like your artistic influences? Um, was it like the flags and like fascist aesthetics first and foremost, or like are there specific painters or sculptors or who like inspire or inform your work? You mentioned the futurists, but like any specific futurists or
Well,
artists from outside of that, or
I was already pretty into my style before I even discovered futurism. Like I've tried, integrate some of those themes and ideas, but like when it comes down to it, I was kind of I can't really give a name to it initially. Like I spent a lot of time on like Poll, other internet forums, and I just saw the kind of radical artistry that would be shown there, and I kind of just picked up on that, that digital, that analog, that digital and analog, like warping this blending of old and new, like, and you notice this a lot in everything I do, like every single
yeah,
picture, it's never just from a single time period. All the stuff in it is always from almost eons apart sometimes. um one of the ones I sent you, the one with like the big old machine with like a bunch of random parts on there. Each one of these is like from a different century. There's like a bicycle wheel from the 1950s. There's a Gatling gun from I'm pretty sure it was like the British conquest of like or some peacekeeping mission in Rhodesia. Behind it, a diagram of the air loom. It was like probably one of the oldest schizo posts out there. And that was like in the
yeah.
18th century, I believe. Um, I don't know if I can like ideologically for my art. I have a lot of influence from the futurist movement. I also like a lot of the works of like Charles Bacon. I know that doesn't really, my stuff doesn't look like his, but I try to get some of the vibe sometimes. Um,
Okay. Yeah, I like the piece you mentioned. I like that one a lot. Like, what's your process for like putting that together? Do you sketch these out, or like do you have an idea of what you want before you get started, or is it like very organic and just kind of happens in the moment? Um,
it it's always like something different sometimes. Sometimes I'll like quotes. I use like whenever I post my art, I add a quote to it. And they have a
yeah,
heavy like influence on what I'm doing. Sometimes I see a picture online, I let like some old like photograph, some bombed out ruin. I just start adding stuff and it's very organic. It just kind of happens. Then I just sit back, I think, what does this remind me of? And then I'll pull up a quote to go with it. But sometimes it's the opposite way around. Sometimes I'll think of a quote, or maybe I'll discover a quote from someone I didn't really know after, trying to verify it to make sure it was real. I'll go back and I'm like, huh. And then I'll make something out of that quote. That those words. This is how I translate to it on a paper. Sometimes it's just something I saw in everyday life that I thought was an interesting look, and then I just try to redo it, but like in a weird, surrealist way. It just really just kind of happens. Sometimes I plan it, sometimes I don't.
okay. So like, there's no consistent method you use, or you might be reading a book, find a passage you like, and that will inspire a piece you want to do, or like you've already kind of got the visual and like you try and figure out what quote you want to add
Yeah, like
into it
what
after the
is
fact.
it's like what is this saying? Because I like when I'm making just blatant ones that are just blatantly propaganda, where it has a little phrase on there and you see the guy with the flag. Those are incredibly surface level. But like when I'm making something like that stands on itself, I like it to be some story you can pick apart, you can make of it, where it doesn't have to be directly a statement. It could mean many things. It could be saying one thing and then contradicting itself in the same image. It really just kind of depends on what I'm going with.
Okay. Cool. Anything like from outside of politics that inspires you, like movies or literature or um, anything like that, or like outside of visual art that
You
informs
mean
your
like
style? Or, like,
oh
yeah, like or video games, like anything like that. Like from outside of like art and politics, like
okay
traditional like visual art, I guess.
okay well for that There are a few like video games that I've had to say like have influenced me, and like not just like artistry, but also like philosophically, because games like any sort of artwork can be influential, at least good ones anyway.
Yeah,
Like
video games are like a totally immersive kind of art form. And there's like a element to it, storytelling element to it. There's a visual component. Um, yeah, there's like a whole world design that goes on
yeah,
with video
it's
games. So
very
I definitely get that. Like, it's not usually talked about in terms of being an art, but I would say it qualifies, even though I'm not like a big gamer myself. Like, that it's valid,
yeah,
especially for
yeah.
21st century and like young people today who play a lot of video games, you know. But
Well,
yeah,
the
like which
whole the
game?
whole like idea of games, like it's an art form, an entirely new and original art form that's incredibly in its infancy. They haven't been around like most people who are playing video games. Well, at least the people who made the first video games, they're still around right now. They're this art form hasn't had a single generation. It's been like almost one lifetime. It's very young in it's in its infancy of creativity, and people aren't going to take it seriously until it becomes old, like rock and roll or jazz. Um,
Yeah,
I think that some of the things that have influenced me, Fallout. I know I'll be listing some games that people are going to just start chanting soy, but I really like Fallout. Like New Vegas, obviously. Everything else is kind of garbage. Um, just some of the ideas that you get to actually talk about. So I like the artistry of it, like Fallout of New Vegas, like just some of the styles that has. Because like every other Fallout game, they're constantly hitting you over the head with a stick that, oh, it's nuclear apocalypse. Oh, it's a nuclear apocalypse. But it's like it's been 200 years. The world's going to change. It's going to grow. It's going to move past that. And that's kind of what's going on in Vegas. You don't see that many like nuclear bomb craters or like toxic waste dumps. They exist, but like most of it's just desert and shanty towns of people just living out there in this brand new altered world that's starting to go back to normal. And I always liked that in between, the in between of times, where you have like a robot standing next to like some cowboy shanty. It's a very interesting aesthetic. It's very unique. Um,
yeah. What about vaporwave? Does that inform your work at all? I'm looking at this one of like the sculpture, and there's like the
oh yeah, the one that says "kill yourself."
late, yeah, late 80s computer. There's the checkered floors, the waves. Yeah, it looks very like vaporwave to me. Does that inform your work at all?
Yeah, the vaporwave. I like vaporwave. A lot of like I like a bunch of the wave like scene, like like all the reincarnations, like Fash Wave, Labor Wave, Vaporwave. Yeah, I always go back to Macintosh Plus. Like I'll listen to that when I'm
Yeah,
driving or doing something else. Yeah, that is a major influence because it's a very internet aesthetic, and I kind of like with the way that I do stuff. It's all very internet because this art wouldn't make any sense if it was on a canvas or if it was like architecture. It only makes sense as like a picture on a screen, and it's like the colors just don't work in real life if it's not coming out of a screen.
yeah.
Uh, it's a
Do
very
you ever? I think I asked this a little earlier, but like, do you ever like draw these out or anything beforehand, or like have you always just gone straight to the computer to produce your art?
a, a lot of
Do
them
you
I
work
end
in
up
other
like
mediums at all?
a lot of like a lot of the ones that are more complicated than just guy and background and word. The more propaganda stuff, some of the stuff that that I'll like put a lot more time into. Um, yeah, typically it starts as like if some weird sketch that I made, or sometimes I'll uh I'll see a weird cloud. I'm like, hey, that's an interesting shape. Then I'll sketch it out, like when I'm on break at work or something. Then I'll come home and just start working on something. Uh, they're never terribly complicated when they get started on the sketch. It's basically like a central idea of thing here, place here, person here, and then it just becomes something else when I put it on the computer. Like some of the stuff I have here are actual like some of the backgrounds of some of the stuff I've done are actually like I couldn't find something I wanted online, or I couldn't make it in Photoshop. So I will paint something in real life and then put that on the background, or like maybe just a subtle texture on like a single object. I've done that a few times.
Okay, so it's definitely like a multi kind of approach. Whatever's clever for the task, or however you can accomplish your vision. Like you will work in like other mediums, or like draw things out by hand or paint them out, um, and then go to the computer. It's not like just one dimensional, 100%
Yeah.
online, like on the computer. Yeah, I can kind of pick up on that a lot. Like this one of the wars, like it looks like a war zone with the sun, or a bomb exploding almost, and looks like a war, like a bombed out city or something.
Oh
Um,
yeah, that one.
yeah, that one looks like you definitely drew it out, maybe sketched it out, or was it like a found image that you tinkered
Oh,
with?
that actual one, that is so many images. So that is when I try to make like warscapes, I never try to make it something specific. Every single one of those buildings there is from a different conflict. The one with like the dome in the background, that's the building that survived Hiroshima. The people walking through it, that's from a picture taken during Stalingrad. Like there's like several. It's not like it's just a single image. There's like maybe 20 different war scenes all plastered on there. Some just completely completely wiped out by the filtering or when I try to get like effects going on, but they're still there. There's like a whole uh, it's a lot of stuff going on. I always like to have like a whole bunch of references to stuff if anyone picks up on this image or where it might have come from.
Okay. Let's see. Um, we just had Lord Dark in here. He's not here now. He left. Let's talk about third position radio a little bit. So, like, how did you get started on that with Lord Dark? Was he like, how did it come together? I guess.
Me and him just kind of wanted to have a podcast to talk about stuff, and that just kind of got started. I mean, sometimes we make more episodes, sometimes we make less. We're busy guys. We got stuff going on in life. Um, yeah, that's
Yeah,
really
for
how that
sure.
kind of started. Just we wanted some place to have a little podcast, and we thought we had some good connections to bring some interesting people on to talk, and I think it's worked out pretty well so far.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good show. I'd highly recommend it. Not just because I'm on it a couple times. They bring a lot of interesting guests on. Like Lord Dark interviewed the leader from the Afun Party, AFUN,
Yeah.
which is like a black nationalist group. It's definitely like a group that other like third positionist podcast would not bring on. Also, Futurism Forever. Like, we don't really fit in comfortably in third position circles. Like, I find Futurism is not like well received a lot of the time in the 3P crowd. Like, it does often lean heavily traditionalist. That's something like we've butted heads with people about since we got started. It's like a never ending debate. So like, yeah, you guys are willing to take a risk with like those groups that don't really fit in comfortably within the third position traditionally. Um,
Well,
is
I
there a
feel like there,
reason for
there has
that,
to be.
or
Well, that's just kind of ideologically where I stand. Like, I don't. When I talk about like, and this, I'm going to be talking about like speech, freedom of speech, the importance of discussion. Uh, I don't really like. I don't really take the word like freedom for like to mean anything inherently as a value. Like, I don't think anything that doesn't have a utilitarian use has any value, and that includes freedoms. But the freedom of speech, the freedom to communicate, to have an open dialogue, will only improve things. And I think that's something that we need to work on as the third position, as these people, either radical left, radical right, or whatever. We need to start actually having conversations because the more we shove ourselves into echo chambers, the more diluted and insane our ideas are going to become because they're going to become so far removed from reality because there's no external input to go against or for arguments. And we need to really start doing that. If that means we got to talk to Nazis, if we got to talk to communists, yeah, we'll have to do it because if our ideas can't hold up to basic criticism from the other side because we're too busy, sucking our own dicks in our little comfy hole, then there's not a point to any of this. It's just all invalid rambling.
yeah, ultimately, like the U.S. is a very complex kind of nation to build like a nationalist movement in because it's such a vast swath of land and it's so diverse and like I don't know. I guess like let's get more into the political now. Like, yeah, what do you think like a third positionist movement like should look like in America? Should it be strictly ethno-nationalist, or should it be a little more flexible? Um, should it be traditionalist, or should it be futurist? Like, what would you like to see from like a third position group in America in 2022, given like realities?
Well, fascism is about being about the organic state. It's not about being this stagnant thing held down by legislation. That's the main reason to have one guy in charge who can do whatever that needs to be done, so nothing's held up by red tape, so you can change to changing circumstances. And that's why fascism ideologically and functionally, from all matters, is different every time you see it appear in history. National Socialism is different than Italian fascism, which is different than clerical fascism in like Slovakia, or some of the Russian fascists that existed, or even the Japanese to a certain extent, with the Zaibatsu almost functioning as corporate syndicates within the government. All these had different forms, and that's because that's what fascism does. It changes for the circumstances. So in every single country, it's going to be different. And that's why I really don't like these people with their heads in the past saying, "Yeah, we got to have a Fuhrer in America. Yeah, it's got to be, we got to be supporting the American race or something like that." In America, we are a fundamentally diverse and weird place, and it's too big of a place to be run from the top down everywhere. It's gonna have to be federal, or you're not gonna have the whole United States. We're just too big. Um, and you can only change the culture of a place so much as its leadership. And even though today, where we have like this weird back ass word idea of how like people more on the left winging side of America, um, people who call themselves liberal despite wanting a new like authoritarian like rulership of things, more of a technocratic anyway. Even though they proclaim liberal values, which were against like any sort of government whatsoever, um, we can't. I know I'm rambling onto a lot of things right now, but we can't just enforce everything in America the same way that Nazi Germany would run, or even fascist Italy. We're too big. You'd have to you have to hold up a lot of the American freedoms that already pre-existed. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to curry the favor of the people. Even if you were to conquer them, I think I can't remember his name. He was the guy who wrote Brave New World. He talks about like
Aldous Huxley.
Huxley. Yes, he talked about the consent of the governed, and it doesn't matter how powerful any leader, like any organization that ruled a country is. Doesn't matter how much energy or weapons or people they have. They need the support of the people they're governing, because the people are always going to outnumber them, and there's nothing stopping them from revolting or having a general strike, or basic sabotage that can overthrow plenty of shit can authoritarian regimes in the past. You need people to like you. You need to work with them, especially for uh, fascism, an idea that is entirely to represent the people without doing the bureaucratic bullshit of democracy. You have to do what the people need to be done, what they want, and if that means giving them gun rights or allowing them to get abortions, that's what it has to be. So you can't just run America like you would have some authoritarian country in Europe or or Asia or Central America. But at the same
Yeah,
time, we have to get rid of a lot of things that we have right now. One of the worst things about liberal capitalism is that it allows you too much freedom in a way. It says you can live your life any way you want to, no matter how self-destructive that is to either you, your local society, your friends, your family. Go ahead and do it. Doesn't matter how stupid it is. Go get really weird piercings on your forehead to make you look like a lizard. That's fine. You paid for it. You're giving us money. I don't care what that affects you. We should restrict that to a major extent, because it's gotten to a crazy degree where individualism has consumed the Western world in a way, in a not very good way.
Yeah, what you were saying earlier about like authoritarianism, um, it's like very like stark these days, especially. with the COVID restrictions and all that. But like liberalism can be very authoritarian when it wants to be. Like I
Oh,
live
I
in
know.
Canada, and yeah, like the COVID restrictions are very like strict, and you have to wear the mask, mandatory vaccines, all that shit. And it led to like the trucker protests and all that. And like, yeah, they are starting to lose like popular favor because of it, to a certain extent, anyway. But yeah,
Yeah,
like it's a very liberal country at the same time, though. Like, we legalized gay marriage way before the states did. We have legal weed, free healthcare, all that. Like all that's well and good, I guess. But yeah, if you like transgress their laws or whatever, like there are limits to free speech and all that, and like you can, get the. You're not free to do whatever you want, even in liberalism. Like they will like use authoritarian measures to um, protect their ideology or whatever. If you transgress liberal doctrine, then
yeah.
the arm of
It's
the
this.
state will slam down. So like fascism really shouldn't just be authoritarianism alone, because like communism was also authoritarian.
Well, monarchs
Um,
were authoritarian. You've had theocracies authoritarian. Any form of government can take an authoritarian route. In the same way, they can be more libertarian in a way.
yeah, there is like a fascist conception of liberty also. Like there is like room for the individual to like live how he sees fit within like the fascist framework. It's not totally insensitive to that. But it's like so long as it doesn't transgress the state or you know or undermine the state or work against the interests of the state. There are always limits, right? But anyway, what were you saying?
Oh well, just going back to like the Canada thing, with all the truckers and stuff and
Yeah.
the mask mandates. These and this happens not as great an extent in the states, but like these these governments that extensively looked the other way when the George Floyd riots were wrecking across the America. Was that a bit of an issue in Canada? Did that happen at all? Or
Yeah, there were some protests and stuff. It didn't get as gnarly in Canada as it did in the states, but
okay,
where there
well,
were these like riots and stuff like all summer. It wasn't that crazy in Canada. There were
okay.
protests and stuff, but
But like it's the arbitrariness of it. It's not a level hand of authority. It is we allowed these protests to happen because with them we are going to get popular support for becoming more authoritarian. With them we're going to they're doing the thing we wanted them to do. They're not hitting our establishments. They're not burning down politicians' places. They're not burning down CEOs' houses. They're burning down their own suburbs. They're burning down local businesses, and it's only going to hurt them, and it doesn't affect us at all. We're going to allow this and not stop it. But people not wearing masks who have already gotten all their vaccinations, that's completely verboten. It's crazy how little it affects things, and even more how the level of arbitrary this is. How much people just ignore it too. Like I went to Vegas last year on my for my birthday. I drove all the way to Vegas. Not a single person in Vegas besides like the people dealing cards were wearing masks. And this was like right after things stopped shutting down. Nobody was wearing masks there. They didn't need vaccination passes. But I get back home and I hear that, businesses are going to require people to start getting vaccinations from federal decree. Of course, that, went back on it because the states had a fuss. But it's it's just crazy how arbitrary some of these things are, that people are taking people wearing a little piece of paper over your mouth that really wouldn't stop a cough that much more seriously than people burning down half their city.
yeah, CSD is listening in. He's allowed to speak if he wants to, but he was saying in the chat, paleocom writer Samuel Francis had a name for this: anarcho tyranny, where the elites will let riots happen but will arrest people for not wearing masks. Yeah, are you familiar with, or like, what are your thoughts on anarcho tyranny and Samuel Francis? Or,
I have not read anything from Samuel Francis, but that's incredibly accurate. I agree with that sentiment entirely. the way that I've always described, at least my interpretation, was controlled dissidents. You know, like
Yeah,
how Antifa can go and throw their violent organizations all the time, but the second Unite the Right started, or any other like right wing or even remotely conceptually right wing or protest happens, like the truckers, which wasn't really political at all, but whatever. Anytime something that what isn't their little precious darling organization only used to be set at their enemies is going against the law, then they crack down on it. I've always just seen that
yeah,
as controlled opposition.
yeah. They like a lot of people were talking about the trucker protests as if it was like this uprising of the workers or something. It was really not a revolutionary movement, though. Like they just were pushing back against mandates. Like it is civil disobedience or what have you. There were good characteristics to it, but yeah, their goals wasn't to like overthrow the state or something. They weren't. It wasn't like a workers' uprising like that.
Yeah,
You know, they were just pushing back on mandates
it
so that
wasn't
things can go
March
back
on
to normal. Yeah,
it wasn't March on Ontario. It was let's drive around and honk our horns.
yeah, yeah. Still, it got a lot of attention, and they are loosening up their restrictions. So, like, I don't know. I do think that kind of organization can have like good effects. But
Yeah, civil disobedience is always good. And I think that what happened in Canada, they were doing something right when everyone started labeling them fascists, because that's when we don't have any good argument, call them a Nazi. That's, when you're saying something good that the system doesn't want. That's when you're doing a good job.
yeah, you'll see one rando in the crowd carrying like a swastika flag with like the creases in it, and that happened at Charlottesville too. It's like when this keeps happening, it's pretty obvious. It happened at the quote unquote insurrection at the Capitol building like a year and a half ago. Also, like someone had like a white nationalist flag or something they hung up.
Oh yeah, the boomer waffen who were gonna overthrow the government.
Yeah, yeah. Really, they didn't do anything. They just walked around the Capitol building and took pictures.
They didn't even
like,
leave it in. They didn't even leave it in shambles. Like maybe like through water bottles. Like they the one guy took a podium. It really wasn't. Everyone who calls it a revolution or a coup is a moron. If they
yeah,
wanted to kill people, they could have. Like this is
yeah,
America. Every single household I know has an assault rifle. If they wanted to march into the Capitol and do that thing, but with weapons, they could have, but they didn't because they weren't. It was just a demonstration, and not even the first people to storm the Capitol. I think a feminist group did it once back in the Obama presidency. I believe the Black Panthers did it back in the 70s or something.
yeah.
All these
They
times,
were actually armed when they did it too.
exactly. The
Yeah,
only reason that we're talking about this is because everyone was all like, "Oh, it was Trump's last chance to get back in power." No.
the way the media covered that was laughable to me. Like you actually watched the footage, and they were very like well behaved. They weren't rioting or anything. No one was getting assaulted or hurt. Like at most, I saw some journalists getting fucked with outside, but
Good.
um,
That's my advice. Journalists are bad. They may try to convince you that they were good at one point and they suddenly became bad. No, that's a lie. They've always been. It's always been yellow journalism from the start, from the end. They're awful. If they ask you any questions, don't answer them.
yeah. Now with the internet, like we're less reliant on them. They can't totally control the narrative like they could a few decades ago. Even when I was a kid, like the internet was not like nearly as commonplace as it was now. Now with YouTube, like everyone has a camera on their phone. You can see what really happened if you go like digging for it. So,
Exactly. I know anyone listening to this isn't going to be the people we're talking about. I know if you're listening to this right here, you're not some guy who gets your news from Fox News or CNN or any of those other gobshites saying whichever side of the political spectrum they mean to be biased towards. You can go onto Twitter or anything online and see on the ground footage. That doesn't mean the cloud of war is not going to be there. It is. It always is. Like, in Ukraine, we can see footage coming out of everywhere. We know what's going on. I still don't know if the ghost of Kiev is just Ukrainian propaganda or not. There will always be these misconceptions. But in the sense of like with the truckers going on in Canada, when that was going on, my grandma was all like, "Oh, I've heard they're violent," and I was like, "Where?" Like, show me evidence. It's like, "Oh, I saw on TV." I was like, "Okay, show me evidence." You can control the narrative when you're the only one talking, but when I can see people out on the floor, on the ground, doing what they're actually doing, it's a different story.
Yeah, yeah. None of these right wing rallies really get that out of hand. I think like after Charlottesville, it's easy to label everything like any kind of political action like a terrorist act, or like the media can spin it that way, and they do still try to. But you know, like I said, everyone has a camera on their phone now. If you go looking for footage from the ground, like you can find it if you want to, and it usually tells a very different story from what the media is saying. So yeah, personally, I applaud I celebrate their lack of power over the minds of the populace, and wish it to be minimized even more. There are still boomers who like eat all that up, like without questioning it ever. So, but less and less all the time. I think,
Oh yeah, they're dying. I mean, yeah, that's the thing. They're an aging population. I mean, not to say that Gen Z or millennials have it all figured out, because we obviously don't. But we aren't so reliant on the official narrative, at
yeah,
least from the news agencies. Of course, you still have online bots who get upset about the new current event going on, like all these armchair historians who are now talking about what's going on in Ukraine, even though like a month ago they probably couldn't point it out on a map. But it's baby steps, baby steps.
true, true. So back onto like art and aesthetics, like
Yeah, yeah. We got off
how
topic a bit. That's my bad.
well, we want to get a feel for you. Like, you label yourself like a third position propagandist. So, like, your work is very political. It's informed by politics.
True.
Most of it is overtly political. So we want to talk about politics in the interview too. That's fine. It's not that off topic, because there's a lot of overlap between your art and your politics. But how important do you think aesthetics is to like political groups, or like especially radical groups? Like, is it important for them to have like a distinct image? It was definitely important to fascism. Like they were good about aesthetics at the very least. you
Oh,
know
it's
um
not just important. I would go as far to say that it's everything. It really is. Like, um, in all directions. Obviously, you can't go around nowadays dressed up, in your SS cosplay, goose stepping down the streets of whatever your hometown is. That's not a good look. But at the same
yeah,
time, you need to differentiate yourself. You can't walk around in a suit and tie like a Jehovah's Witness, going, "Hey, can we tell you about Mussolini?" That's not going to work either. It needs to be distinct. It needs to stand out. Support your ideology. It can't be some weird contrast. You can't walk up to somebody looking like a hippie and start talking about federal, like the importance of a strong state. You need to be good looking. I'm not saying you have to look like a model, but I mean, like, you need like strong men out there, strong men, strong women in good uniforms, maybe roughhousing with Antifa thugs every once in a while, but going out and cleaning up a park, going out and doing a food drive, or going door to door talking to people about your ideas, because this aesthetic alone can bring people over to your side. I mean, you saw how things go with the Nazis. Like, they are in Western society. We will forever see the picture of the stormtrooper and think Nazi every time, no matter what. And we'll see influence from movies and shows basing their stuff off the stormtrooper design, because it's so drummed into our heads as such an iconic symbol that it will always have that value. Even the value of, well, negative, mostly connotations, but a value of fear, a value of power. And even though you may not understand what that might mean, the symbols, what they might mean, that power is still there, and it influences you.
yeah. Even though it's kind of a meme at this point, I'm going to talk about Siege for a bit. Like, or Joseph Tomasi and like the National Socialist Liberation Front. Um, After like George Lincoln Rockwell died, Tomasi was like in the group back then, and he stayed in the group, and like he really butted heads with the more conservative leaning new leadership. I think his name was Cool or something. It slips my mind. I'm not all about American white nationalism like that. But one of the things that he did like argue with him about was he wanted to drop the uniforms. He thought it was off-putting. It made them look like insane to the normal people. It's not going to endear people to our cause. He thought what they should be doing is just dressing normal, like blending into the youth culture, like abandon the uniforms. Grow your hair out, look normal. It's the 70s, right? And that's one thing that like he did butt heads with them about. But it's something like I actually really agree with him on. Like I think the strict uniform is really off-putting for most people. Like, we don't wear suits anymore either. Like our culture is a lot more casual. You should approach people where they're actually at and, look relatable to them. Casa Pound does that. Like they don't have a strict uniform. I don't have a problem with like a dress code, like some guidelines, but matching uniforms is a little much. It makes like groups look like cults or something. It was one of my criticisms of Charlottesville, like everyone wearing like matching khakis with white polos. Like you guys look like Bible salesmen, first of all, and second of all, like it looks like a cult or something. That's my perspective. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I think there is a lot of. You're right about the whole. Like, even though I'm talking about how you need this constant aesthetic, there is, yes, something to be said about looking like normal people. You don't want to look like a bunch of crazy guys, and that's understandable.
You should be presentable. You shouldn't show up to the protest in like a Slayer hoodie and sweatpants. Like it's a bad look. Like take some pride in your appearance. You're representing our ideology. You're representing our group. Like, look like you give a shit. But at the same time, like, yeah. I'd say like it depends on context too, though. Sometimes the suit is a requirement. It depends what you're doing. I mean,
yeah, I feel like during like an organized protest, especially when you need to form a shield wall to not be encircled by Antifa black box tactics. I think suits and like uniforms function equally as a psychological weapon for you as well as imagery. Like you're gonna look like something intimidating. You're gonna look like something worth joining. But also, if you're in the melee, and a lot of these things do turn violent, not all of them naturally, but when you're in the melee, you're gonna want to look over and see someone dressed just like you, so you know who you're gonna be punching. Because if everyone just shows up here with roughly red or something t-shirts, there's gonna be a friendly fire. And I don't just mean from a practical standpoint, but there's a certain psychological hype of when you're standing shoulder to shoulder with people who are with you, who look like you, who dress like you. And that's like the ideas from as oldest military tactics. This idea of brotherhood. But you're right. I can't. You're not going to show up to like some public let's just say you're the representative for your cadre or whatever organization you're working for. You come to represent some town council and you dress up in full SS regalia. No, that's going to look ridiculous. You want to show up there. You don't have to be like immaculate. Be smartly dressed. Have a khaki, something tucked in. I think it really should just change on the event. Like you should look good all together and be smartly dressed. Have make sure everyone who's going out in public is fit and doesn't look like a complete inbred. But at the same time, you need to change for different social events. If you were going to go talk to some college club or some sort of a smaller deal thing, dress for the occasion.
Yeah, and stop being so obsessed with historical movements. Anyways, like don't be wearing like a Nazi SS uniform. You look ridiculous. This is not Halloween. Like focus on the issues that people actually give a shit about. Like, if you're serious about changing America or pushing America in like a more fascistic direction, like focus on the issues, get people behind you, or to at least understand your point of view and what you're advocating. Like, I think people get sidetracked on like, we have to repair Hitler's image or like will never be taken seriously. No,
I'm not
issues,
saying you need.
promote the ideology. Like, yeah,
I'm
I
not
don't know.
saying you
I'm
should
kind of
leave.
just like,
No, I get you. I get you. I'm just saying.
yeah,
I'm not saying you should leave everything in the dust. Like, obviously you don't be carrying around poster boards with the picture of Hitler's face on it. That's stupid. But like, you shouldn't try to dodge around all these things either. Like, because then we're just doing the same sonic dance the communists are doing. Going, oh, that wasn't real fascism. I was like, no, National Socialism was fascism. We can't go and say, oh, well, it's not really, or Hitler was a traitor or schizo or stuff like that. The constant things you hear from people. No, we got to be better than that. Say, yes, he was a fascist, but that's not the ideas that I'm promoting. You can't hide from the shadow of Hitler, but you shouldn't bask in it either.
yeah, you shouldn't be. I just think like personally, I don't think Hitler was a fascist. I think National Socialism had like shared some characteristics with fascism, but like I do think it was like its own ideology. Like it places the race at the center, where fascism places the state at the center, and those have very different implications. I would describe them both as third position, but there were like important differences. So right. I guess like what we can
as a third position, not fascist. But you know what I mean? When you start trying to draw these lines saying, hey, this wasn't real, but this was, we're doing the same shit that, the people we're going against are doing constantly.
Yeah. What do you think about groups like, I guess, the Seamusites or American Reformation Front that like do not include National Socialists in their organizing? Do you think that's self-limiting, or do you think they have more growth potential because of it? Or you don't have to kick dirt or anything, but like just give honest opinion.
I got you. As I'm gonna be honest, as someone, I'm willing to work with anyone who can fit on the third position with us. But I think as an organization that wishes to be treated seriously, it is smart to separate yourself, because even though, yes, you are limiting your potential growth range, there's not that many Nazis in America. That's just the nature of it. If you were talking about some place that's a lot more, racially radical, yeah, then that would be a different story. You'd be dumb if you try to keep them out of your group. But in America, as it stands today, there's not that many Nazis or who take racial politics seriously. And so I think it only makes sense. The reason why I wish to include Nazis and other racial radicals in my dialogue or when I'm talking about things is because that's where I came from. And I think that we can sway them away from it. There's plenty of good arguments to be had with them for them to come to our side. Like one of the biggest things that got me disenfranchised with the whole movement, like, white nationalism in general, was just, everyone kept going on about like how it's just going to be how it used to be, but it's white this time. And I'm like, that sounds just as bad. Just because it's now white people ruling us like certain individuals in the upper classes do, you're not going to have all these 1% decadency is still going to be here, but they're all going to be white. All of the all this drug problems that we have are going to be still there, but it's going to be white. Why would you want it to be the exact same thing? It wasn't good to begin with. Let's move past this whole obsession over whiteness and get over the social issues.
Yeah, I agree. I think we had this conversation before on your show.
Yeah, we have
on my first appearance. But yeah, I mean, like, I think presenting, like, have your dialogue behind closed doors, but like projecting like the National Socialist image in 2022 for an American public, like, it's going to turn away more people than it's going to bring in, and you're going to get sidetracked like defending a historical movement, and like rather than like focusing on the issues in the here and now, focusing on today, like on our own communities. And like you mentioned, like the fentanyl and like drug epidemic that's going on in the States now, like that is very relatable to people. Like if you bring potential like solutions to the table, like people will be sympathetic to that and they'll come closer to your point of view. But you like if you start talking about Hitler and stuff, like it's an uphill battle from day one, because like I don't know, there's been a whole propaganda machine presenting him as like the most evil man like throughout history. And it's not like answering or like providing any answers or anything to problems in 2022 that people are concerned about. It's not speaking to people's concerns. So I think like, yeah, it distracts from the issues and derails movements, attaching themselves too much to historic movements. We're just like dancing though. Like we don't need to debate it out on the in your interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's up, Alka? We're recording an interview right now with Weaponized Goebbels. CSD was trying to say something. I've kind of asked all my questions already, so we can do like an open mic. We've been going for 55 minutes, but yeah, if you guys have any questions you want to ask Goebbels before we wrap up.
I was just going to add on that, like, we see with this whole, like, fascism versus Marxist-Leninist debate, that it's always historical, when usually both of these groups tend to agree on most of the problems that are facing the modern world, other than maybe on the questions on race and the JQ. And
Yeah.
do you all think it is necessary to, like, you know, get past these old ideologies and go to, like, something new? Well, how would you answer that, Goebbels?
I think one of the one thing that we share with fascism and Marxism is that we both believe in dialectical theory, and we are the dialectical answers to the same problems. And we're going to be bumping heads until a new dialectic conversation takes place sometimes in the future. And so, in the same extent that we need to talk about the here and now first, and not some old debate of like ancient borders or some ideological query. This butting heads with them about these issues and how they should be answered is the exact like what formed us as fascism, separated us from Marxian ideas, and like. I think that we should move past it to a certain extent, but that's kind of what we are. So I'm somewhere in between on that. There's parts that we should move forward. There's also parts we should hold on to because that's who we are.
Okay. So yeah, like I said, I think I've asked all the questions I intended to. Are there any like final remarks you want to make, or yeah, I'm going to link to your BitChute channel and your Twitter. Is there anywhere else people can find you or your work or,
I think
where are you online, basically?
I think Dark is starting to upload some of our stuff onto YouTube. I'll send you a link to that so you can put that on there as well.
Okay.
I can't guarantee how long it'll be on there because, we jump into some things. YouTube, Twitter, BitChute. For a while, I'm probably going to be taking a few steps away from the internet. It's not like a permanent thing, but if everyone expects me to be posting at the rate I am right now, they're going to be disappointed. Just personal stuff going on, but thank you for having me. If we were doing this the YouTube live stream, you guys we could have pulled up more questions from random guys, but I doubt it would have gotten as many views as the last
I got
video.
one more question if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Who are your favorite American writers and artists, if you have any?
American writers. Kind of like contrary to some of the political beliefs that I have, I'm quite the fan of Kurt Vonnegut. Like I have like his whole collection, Slaughterhouse-Five, Cat's Cradle. It's had a major influence on me. I just like the surrealist.
Breakfast for Champions is hilarious. I love that book.
Yeah, it's just always surreal and able to laugh no matter what's going on, no matter how grim it might be. It's although I don't agree with Kurt's politics, I really do like his writing style.
He is an interesting writer, though. Slaughterhouse-Five is great, also.
It is. I have an original release. I have like the one I had back in high school. I have the graphic novel of it.
Yeah, that one's about the Dresden bombing, and this dude kind of travels through time. So it's kind of science fiction,
It's kind of science fiction. It's based off of his direct experience as a POW during the Battle of the Bulge and the bombing of Dresden.
Yeah, it's semi-autobiographical. There is like a dark, cynical sense of humor underlying his work all the time, which I think is great. I'm also a big Vonnegut fan. I didn't expect that actually, but yeah. Anyone else?
He was asked, American artists. I don't know. I've always kind of, when it comes to artists, kind of looked foreign. I don't know what it is. I kind of got my love of modern art when I was visiting the British Museum of Modern Art. You know, I was going through there. It was just, I was kind of uninterested for most of it because I just saw this postmodern bullshit that was like too abstract to be mean anything. And then I saw this one image. It was some person retelling their like horror of like their like a village being burnt down in Zimbabwe or something. And it was so abstract, and I didn't even need to read the placard on the side saying what it was about. I knew it was something horrific, something tragic, something human, like something that breaks the human mind. And I didn't need to know where it was from or how it happened. I wish I knew the art piece off the top of my head so I could buy a copy of it. But that was the moment I realized that, because I was like one of those dorky kids. I was like, oh, it's just a line on a painting, not knowing what it could mean to have a story that you need to tell yourself. I didn't have that experience with any American artists. At least, more popular ones. I have, artist friends on Twitter, but like, like any mainstream people.
I do find American art tends to, no offense to Americans listening, but it doesn't hold a candle to European art, especially like the modernists. Like you think of the surrealists, the Dadaists, the futurists, all the like the modern movements, they are very centered around like Europe. There are exceptions, but
I guess like Art Deco, Art Deco is very American.
Yeah, that's true.
But
not to say there aren't good American artists, but
they just haven't had that much influence on me myself.
Yeah, the kind of artists we cover on this channel tend to be European more times than not. I don't like, aside from the Black Mask, I guess Ben Maria is American, but yeah, we haven't really covered a lot of American artists. Maybe we should think about doing that in the future. There are like good like South American art movements that I like Estridentismo a lot, but that's Mexico. That's not like the States, so it is North America. But
yeah, but like just saying like North America, like the three countries in America, Canada and America are pretty similar, but like Mexico is its own culture.
Yeah, there are like notable surrealists from there, like Diego Rivera. I post him on the channel a lot. A lot of the muralists, Orozco is great. The Estridentismo movement. Yeah, I don't know. This is going way off topic.
Yeah, I guess. Back to books. Things I just suggest for everybody. American Psycho. The movie's good and all, but read the book. It is a postmodern masterpiece. It is horrifying, and don't eat before reading.
So much more brutal than the movie.
Oh Lord, it is. You couldn't have put that in the movie. Like stuff I can think
it got the NC-17 rating anyway. So yeah, there are things in the book that could not be put in the movie. It already got slapped with NC-17. So
there were scenes though that like I really wish they would have kept in the movie, not because they were brutal, but because they get more into like his delusions, and there's a few scenes that I just have like so memorized that aren't even touched on in the movie. But anyway, that's another, if you like, American. Was that Brent Easton Ellis? Wasn't that him?
Yeah. Bret Easton Ellis. Yeah, great writer. Yeah, anyone else?
Geez, off the just top
do you like Polaniak at all, or Polaniak? Fight Club and Survivor, Crash, or not Crash, Choke. He's most well known for Fight Club, but
I've never actually read it yet. I always got this massive reading list. Like I'm currently reading through The Stand. I always have like a giant list of stuff I need to actually read.
Yeah, we're doing a Fight Club episode next weekend. That's why I asked. If you
Okay.
were a fan, like, yeah, we'd love to have you on. But
Oh,
you're
sure. I
not
could.
familiar.
I could start. I could start reading it. Get a hold of a copy and try to catch up with you guys.
Yeah. Or at least watch the movie. But yeah, one or the other. Both is better, but I kind of feel most people are just going to watch the movie, which is fine. As long as some of us have read the book. I've read the
People
book
who act
a few
snobbish
times.
about only watching the movie and watching the book don't realize that the average working man doesn't have time to sit down and read a book from beginning to end.
Yeah,
I just think
it's
that
understandable.
from a personal experience, I always found that books are far more. You're not watching the character; you're in their mind, and it's always a deeper understanding of the story.
Yeah, so to be fair, I do think that it's one of the best book to movie transitions, probably of all time. Like, it's very true to the book. There are some minor differences, but nothing major. It's like American Psycho. The book is on a completely different level from the movie. And like they are very different works. If you've seen the movie, that's not a supplement for the book. And in the case of Fight Club, I kind of think it is. It's very true. There are some minor differences, but nothing major. So the movie is very true to the book, which is rare, But I definitely saw the movie years before reading the book, and like
That's how it usually goes.
yeah, when it came out when I was like 14, which was like the perfect age for Fight Club. I think it resonates like more strongly with millennials than Zoomers. Like, it just millennial boys or men, like men now. But like, I was 14, and yeah, it became my favorite movie. When I was in high school, I watched it. Like, I must have watched it over 100 times. Like, to the point I don't even really need to go back and watch it anymore. Like, yeah, I know it inside and out, but
Yeah, I get
yeah.
that. I get that.
Teenage Geo, that was like his favorite movie for sure.
All right. Well, if you guys don't have anything else, this has been a
Yeah,
wonderful time.
yeah. Thanks for coming on, and hopefully people enjoyed this. Yeah, listen to Third Position Radio. Follow him on Twitter. He does post good content, good quotes, good original artwork, and yeah,
Sometimes shit posts.
yeah, nothing wrong with that. Cool guy IRL too. I haven't met him IRL, but like voice to voice, like, yeah, I always enjoy talking to him. Really good guy. So yeah. Anyway, salute. Thanks for listening, and see you again soon. Peace.